Hi, third grade. It's Friday the 17th of April today, and we have a waning crescent moon. You can only see about 23% of the face of the moon if you go outside tonight and look. It's going to be a nice day. It's going to get up into low 70s today. We are going to be on math lesson 9-7 today. Before we start our math lesson today, I'd like you to go on to Connect Ed, that's our everyday math website, and log in with your username and password. They are in the front of your planner. And I want you to play the game called Product Pileup. And I'm going to send your parents a text with directions to how to play the game. I played it here at home, and I taped myself. So I'm going to send you guys the directions. I don't know if I can upload it to the Google Classroom. If I can, I will. But I am going to text it to the group text of the parents. So you can watch how I played Product Pileup on that video, and then you can try it yourself. It's a lot of fun. There is a strategy to it, and I'm going to talk to you more about the strategy when we get to the math boxes, because there's actually a question about Product Pileup in the math boxes today after you play the game. So play Product Pileup. It's in the grade 3 games. There's a picture of a hot air balloon next to it, and have fun. I hope you enjoy it. You can play 1 or 2 rounds. 2 rounds might be fun once you get the hang of it with the first round. All right, so today for math, we're on lesson 9-7 today. And you're going to need your Everyday Math student reference book. That's the hardcover book. And we're going to be using this page, page 281. And we're also going to be using your math journal. That's your workbook. And we're going to be using page 291 in your math journal. And then I'm going to go over number 1 with you. And you're going to do number 2 by yourself. And then you're going to do the math boxes also, okay? All right. I know I'm going to need my whiteboard, and I have it just over here, so let me go grab it really fast. Okay. Thanks for being patient. I had it on the table, but I put it a little out of my reach. Okay, so we're going to, I hope you've turned to page 281 in your student reference book. You're going to need it for the one I do with you, number 1, and then you're also going to need it for number 2. So this page is labeled Sunrise and Sunset Times for June 21st, 2016. Okay? And you can see lots of different places around the world, and they have their sunrise and sunset times listed. Now the interesting thing about June 21st is that on this year is that for the Northern Hemisphere, that was their summer solstice. That means they got more daylight that day than any other day of the year. But for the Southern Hemisphere, that was their winter solstice. That means for those countries and the cities south of the equator down to the South Pole, they got less sunlight that day than any other day of the year. Because remember, the seasons are the opposite in the Northern and Southern Hemisphere. So in the summer, in June, in the Northern Hemisphere, it's winter in the Southern Hemisphere. So on this day, all these countries north of the equator had a lot of daylight, and all of the countries south of the equator had less daylight. And the farther you move away from the equator, the less daylight you have as you go south, and the further you move away from the equator, the more daylight you have as you go north. So number 1, on page 291 in your math journal, it's going to ask us to look at a city on that map, and they're going to ask us for the sunrise time and the sunset time, and then we're going to have to find the elapsed time. That means their length of, we call the length of day, that we do every day in math calendar. Remember, we see what time our sun is going to rise in the morning of that day that we're in school and what time the sun's going to set, and then we see how long the sun will be up. You're going to be doing the same thing with different places around the world in the math book today, okay? So it says use an open number line. You can see that's what I'm going to have you do here. A toolkit clock. If you have one of those at home, you can use it. Otherwise, we'll just stick with the number line. And other representations to help you calculate the elapsed times. Use the sunrise and sunset data on student reference book page 281, and that's the page I just showed you. So number 1, find the length of day for Esperanza Base, Antarctica, on June 21st, 2016. Show your work. So if I find Esperanza Base, it's down here near the South Pole in Antarctica. You can see the sunrise time is 9:37 a.m. and the sunset time is 2:02 p.m. That's crazy. That means the sun rises after we're in school in the morning. So we've been in school for about an hour already when the sun rises in Esperanza Base on that day, and the sun would set before you even got to go home from school. So if you lived in Esperanza Base and you were in school on June 21st of 2016, you would go to the school in the dark and you would go home in the dark from school because it's a really short day. Remember, that's their winter solstice. So you're going to write their sunrise time 9:37 a.m. and the sunset time 2:02 p.m. And you can see, I'd like you to make the number line just like that, and we're going to find the elapsed time. Now, I'm going to draw what I wrote in my workbook on a whiteboard so you can see it. Okay, so there we go. Now you remember when you draw these, you have arrows at either end, and they just show you that time started before we are here in the timeline, and it will go on after we're on the timeline. Okay? All right. So 9:37 is the sunrise time. That's the time you're going to write to start your timeline. And I'd also write AM. Okay? Now, I would like to get from 9:37 to 9:40 because I always teach you guys we like to get to a nice round number. Okay? So we're going to go from 9:37 to 9:40. We're going to use those hills to jump 1 minute jumps. So I'm going to go 9:38, 9:39, 9:40. And I'm going to make 1, 2, 3 ones. And then I'm going to write 9:40. Okay, now I've gone 3 minutes from 9:37 a.m., 1, 2, 3 to 9:40. So 9:38, 9:39, 9:40. Okay? All right, now I'm going to go from 9:40 to 10. Do you know how many minutes there are from 9:40 a.m. to 10 a.m.? That's right, there's 20 minutes because 40 plus 20 is 60 minutes. So 9:40 plus 20 minutes gets us to the next hour. That's 10 a.m. Okay. Now, my minutes are little hills. They have rounded tops. I'm ready to start jumping by hours now. Do you remember what we do for hours? That's right. Now we make mountains. We write pointy tops. So I'm going to go from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m., and that's 1 hour. And then I'm going to go from 11 to 12, 12 to 1, and 1 to 2. Now remember, when I get to 12, I'm now at 12 noon. And that means it changes over from AM to PM. So I'm writing PM. So 10 to 11 to 12 noon to 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. I jumped 4 hours. And the sun is going to set at 2:02 p.m. So I only have 2 more minutes left. 1, 2, and it's sunset. All right, we know we have 4 hours of daylight. Let's count our minutes. 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. So Esperanza Base is going to have 4 hours and 25 minutes of daylight on June 21st, 2016. And you're going to write that elapsed time down here. So that timeline I just drew, you're going to draw there. And then you're going to write the elapsed time, the length of day, as we say in 3rd grade. That means the amount of sunlight they got that day, 4 hours, 25 minutes. Now, number 2 says, find the length of day for another location on the map and show your work. So you're going to pick another location. You're going to write the city and the country. You're going to write the sunrise time and the sunset time, and you're going to draw your own timeline to see what their length of day is in that city on June 21st, 2016. Now, I'm going to give you a hint. If you like a challenge, pick a city in the northern hemisphere. That means from the equator north, because they're going to have a longer day. The farther north you go, the longer the day is going to be. Okay? So if you're up near the North Pole, they're going to get a lot of daylight that day, probably close to 24 hours of daylight. All right, if you go from the equator south, you're going to have less daylight. So if you want to challenge yourself, go to find a northern city from the equator up to the north, okay? All right. I hope you have fun with that. I think it's a fun activity. I know when we do it in class, people always enjoy it. All right, I need to draw another number line for you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, you've played product pileup hopefully by now. And now we're going, and you've done the activities on page 291 with the length of day. And now we're on 292, that's the math boxes. I'm going to give you some help with this page. Really quickly, I'm going to tell you that for number 3, it says you have these cards while playing product pileup. And if you watched my video and played the game already, you know the strategy for product pileup is starting with the smallest factors you can find. And finding the smallest product that those factors make. Because you're going to need to keep finding larger and larger products to keep piling up on top of your partner, finding one product that's higher than their product. And if you don't save your high cards, you won't be able to beat them in the end of the game. So for the beginning of the game, you want to look for, it says which cards would you play if you go first? You're going to look for low cards. And you can see that in my video that you watched. So look for low cards and then write a number sentence to match your turn. All right, number 4 says use the number line below to label 2/4 and 4/2. And you can see I went ahead and labeled that whole number line. I'm going to show you how to do that too. I'm going to use my whiteboard. Okay? So if you look at this number line, it goes from 0 to 2. Did you notice that? So here's 0 and here's 2. All right? And then you're going to notice they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and number 2 is the 8th line. We don't count the line above 0. And so when you get to the 4th line, 1, 2, 3, 4, you are going to write the number 1. Because that's halfway between 0 and 2. All right, now I'm going to start by, I'm going to pretend that this is just halves. So I'm going to make every other line taller. Okay. I still have all the lines. I just made every other line taller. The tall lines are going to be the halves and the fourths, okay? Excuse me. So 0 is going to be 0/2. The first tall line that's halfway between 0 and 1 is 1/2. And then 1 whole is 2/2. Let's just see what I've done so far. So you can label your number line like that so far. Remember, when the numerator and denominator are the same number, it's equal to 1 whole. All right, and then I'm going to label the next tall line 3/2. And then 2 is equal to 4/2 because 4 divided by, remember we said that fraction sign can be used as a division sign, 4 divided by 2 is 2. All right, so look, 0/2, 1/2, 2/2 is equal to 1 whole, 3/2, 4/2. Now you found 4/2, which is part of the problem. It's equal to 2. Now we're going to label the fourths. So now I'm going to label every line. So 0 is going to be 0/4. See how I'm doing that? And then 1/4 is the next line. And then you know 1/2 is equal to 2/4. So there's 2/4. That's another part of the question that you're going to have to answer. So now we found 2/4. It's equal to 1/2. And then 3/4. And then 1 whole is equal to 4/4. Okay. And then 5/4 is an improper fraction because it's greater than 1. It's 5/4. I didn't make my 5 very clear. I'll fix it. And 6/4 is equal to 3/2. And then 7/4. And 8/4 is equal to 2/2 because 8 divided by 4 equals 2. All right, so that's what your number line should look like for number 4 now. All right, then it says you want to label 2/4. There it is, it's equal to 1/2. And you want to label 4/2. There it is, it's equal to whole number 2. All right, and then you're going to use that to answer the greater than, less than, or equal to number sentences below. And then you're going to mark an X on the number line to show which fraction is closer to 1. What's closer to 1? 2/4 or 4/2? Well, remember, here's number 1 right here in the middle. There's number 1. What's closer? 2/4 or 4/2? Let's see how many 2/4 is. 1, 2. So 2/4 is only 2/4 away from 1 whole. But 4 halves is 1, 2, 3, 4/4 away. So if I talk about 2/4 being it's half or 2/4 away from 1 whole. But 4 halves is 4/4 or 1 whole, right? Or 2 halves away from 1. So you can see that 2/4 is closer to 1 whole than 4 halves is. Okay? So that should help you with number 4 and number 5. That's it for math today. We don't have any home links. So happy Friday. All right, and then we are going to get together at 10:30, and we're going to have a Google Hangout. And before I see you at 10:30, I need you to do me a favor. I need you to read our 2 stories that are going to be on our comprehension test today. It's the end of the week, and we're finishing Unit 5, Week 3. So this is your Wonders book, your literature anthology. Before you see me at 10:30, I need you to read the expository text called Wildfires. Okay, it starts on page 416. Remember, your essential question is, how do teams work together? I want you to go ahead and read that. You can read it out loud to somebody at your house, or you can read it to yourself. Make sure you read the captions too. When you see stop and check questions like this one on 421, go ahead and ask yourself the stop and check, because a lot of times those stop and check questions show up on the tests. Here's another stop and check on 423. And you're going to summarize, which has been our skill for the last 2 weeks, what happens in a wildfire. Summarize what you learned in the section Forests Are Reborn. It's over here. That's on page 427. That's important to know. And you can read the respond to text, make connections questions down here at the bottom. Just read those 2. See if you can answer those about the story before we get together at 10:30. And then you're going to read a tall tale. We just read a tall tale called A Favor Repaid about Sal and a bear. This is another tall tale. This is about a girl named Wendy Gale, who's from Florida, and she has a pet panther. And this is a tall tale. It's a folk tale. It's definitely fiction. You can see the illustrations. And these 2 are able to do things that nobody else I've ever met can do. Okay, that's why it's a tall tale. They have superhuman, supernatural powers. All right, when you're done reading that, it's just a real short story, just these 2 pages. Read the Make Connections questions below, and then we'll be ready to talk to each other at 10:30. When we get together, you need this anthology opened up to the wildfire story. You also need your Wildfires and Wendy Gale and the Great Hurricane test. It's in the very back of the packet we started last week. That's the Unit 5, Week 3 packet. It's at the very back. And a pencil. So have the literature anthology, this test, and a pencil when you see me at 10:30 for our Google Hangout, okay? The other thing that we really need to remember, and that's it for me today, because the things I really need you to do are go to your Flipgrid and record your biography report if you haven't done that yet. The due date is Monday. It's due the 20th of April. Let's see what else. Oh, Mrs. Lute is going to give you something to remember. She talked to you about going on to, she's got that music program for you on Patriot Connect. So I'm uploading directions she's giving you. That's on your assignment for today. So I want you to do that. She's going to come back and meet us in a couple weeks again. So she wants to see how much you guys have learned on recorders. So don't put your recorders away and forget about them. Go ahead and practice that, and practice your 11s, because the 11s test is going to be next week, and we're going to use IXL to do it. So go ahead and practice your 11s. You can use IXL. You can use that website I gave you the other day with all the creative ideas to practice 11s. You can make flashcards. You can use those mathDrills.com worksheets. Anything you like to practice your 11s, but you have about a week left for that. Make sure you get that biography report done by Monday, because I'm going to be reading. I've already started reading them, and they look great so far. The people that have turned them in, they look super good. Lots of good information. But they're due Monday, so work on that. The 11s, Mrs. Lute, and then that's it. And have a great weekend. I hope you get outside and play in the nice weather this weekend. Bye, guys. See you at 10:30.